Hello and welcome to the Intentional Community module. In this one we're going to be looking at how you can take some of the key ideas we've looked at in permaculture and apply it to a community context and some of the benefits to do that, but also the challenges of doing that. So the key things we'll be looking at is firstly some of the main things to consider before setting up a community to help structure the intent and organisation of that community. Then to go through the design of a intentional community and some considerations around that. And then to maintain the success of that community, the ability to keep that community dynamic and fresh, to keep people engaged and interested, to stay connected with the wider community and within that community itself, to stay flexible so that you can accommodate different changes in the community structure and people coming and going, and some of the benefits to living in community. So it's going to be a really exciting topic. It's a chance, I guess, to apply this whole new dynamic into the solutions that permaculture offers by not focused on the beneficial connections of natural systems, but the beneficial connections between people and the systems of connection between people. So it's taking it to a whole new level, so it'll be quite exciting. So here are some of the key considerations with setting up an intentional community. So these are the things that will be a good process to go through in your planning stage before actually physically designing and setting up the community, is to get an understanding or an appreciation of what the common goals and aspirations are of that group of people, and how would those goals and aspirations best be realized within the design of that space and the way it will function. So the core values and principles shared is a context of, for that group of people, what is the common aspirations and goals of that group of people, what do they hope to achieve within the context of that community. So if it's a permaculture community, for example, what are their core objectives in setting up this community? Is it to be able to provide an educational example to the community of how to grow your own food in the context of sharing land with other people? Is it to make that process easier for themselves by collaborating with other people and to be able to perhaps offer some niche type of production in the wider context of other people providing other types of production, so that cumulatively you can cover quite a wide range of production types on one site. So it's a mapping out process really of, for this group of people, what are their intentions of how they'd like to operate, what are their key values, and what are their shared values. So based on those shared values, you can then start mapping out the structure of how that community will operate. So the next thing is the vision for development. So once you've got an idea about what they value, you then want to know where it's going to go to. So are they going to set up a 100-acre demonstration permaculture fully functional farm, and everyone's going to find their niche within that, and they want to be able to produce all the food for that community, to be able to supply a road front shop for the local community, and they will want to also provide educational opportunities within that context. But moving forward, what do they want to achieve at that site? And it gives them a bit of a goal in mind so that it will help steer the direction of that community towards that goal. So the social structure. The next two kind of tie in quite closely together as far as how meetings and decision making in the social structure go. Is it going to be one based on everyone's got their own equal weights of opinion in that centre, and people have some sort of group decision-making context where they all sit down, they all have a turn to speak and voice their ideas, and then maybe some voting structure around the direction that community takes? Or are there some key people that have been there for a long time perhaps, that mediate that process and help guide the decision making of that group and act as a bit of a figurehead for that group? So what kind of structure does it do, and how does that tie in with the social structure of that group? The next three are things that can lead to bit of unrest within the community, and some of the more common things were communities failing and not quite happening as people would expect is the sharing of resources and workload and financial contributions to it. So they all go fairly hand in hand, those ones. The resources might include many different things, but commonly it could be a workshop, for example, a community orchard, a community vegetable garden, a community grazing system, or a forestry system, or just a wetland area. But how are the resources at that site divided between the people that operate that? Is it done on an individual basis, perhaps, where one person runs that particular operation as an independent business and they can exchange their goods with others in the community or in their wider community in exchange for money or for return of goods? Or do they all just have a particular role in running that particular resource within that community, but everyone shares equally in the products or the goods that come from the systems that are in place? So some of the more common concerns are normally around our equipment, so shared equipment such as cars or tools, workshop spaces, things like that, computers. They're probably some of the more common points of concern in a community. Generally, if it's a food forest or a garden situation, that doesn't cause too much trouble. But you want to be able to create a process for sharing these resources equally. One thing I've seen work quite well is an online program where people can, so it lists all the different resources, so it might be a car, a community car, or a trailer, various tools, and people can go onto that online site and they can book out the different resources at different times, and other people can see those bookings and fit in their various bookings. And if some people are having excessive use of a particular resource, that can then feed back into the decision-making process as to the fair distribution of resources. Or if someone has a particular heavy use of one resource, maybe they share another resource they have to help balance that overall context of sharing equally between the different people in the community. So again, with shared work, very similar. There's lots of jobs, obviously, in running a community, as far as maintenance of the site, maintaining messages with email and phone messages, and handling site visitors, and managing all the bookings and things. So there's normally a way of delegating certain tasks for different people within that community on a rolling roster basis, so that everyone has an opportunity to try different things. But there may be particular specialities which people prefer, and that maybe they're rostered more heavily in that particular area, but there's still opportunity for people to try different tasks and to, just for their interest's sake, or to be able to give people a break and to create a bit more diversity in how the workload is shared between people. And the last one is the financial contribution. So again, it's costly to run a community centre as far as the upkeep of resources go, and the maintenance of equipment and the purchase of new equipment. So it generally works well to have a group pool that people are putting money into, and through the decision making and meeting process, they can decide how that pool of money is allocated into different resources, and how those resources are managed within the sharing systems that are in place. So it's a good process to go through to map out these different ideas and how the community is going to run before you embark on the whole process. And some of these things will then go on to affect the design of that community, the best people to suit that community. So often it's set up with a couple of key people, and then they bring on other people. So if they've got a clear idea about how that community will be run and how it will be designed and all set up, then they can better pick the people that will fit in with that community structure the best, and maybe fulfill different niches within how the community will run, which will best complement the other people in that community.